Hi guys, and welcome back to a new Dawn. I am Dawn, and today's topic is going to be an extension to the Enough series. I felt it was appropriate to do a kind of mini series to Enough just to kind of go into some detail about the aftermath of the Great Escape. So if you have not watched the Enough series, there are 3 parts. In part 1 of Enough, it really talks about some of my health concerns. Part 2 and 3 go into some detail about my past experiences with domestic violence. And if you are new to my platform, welcome. If you've been here before, thank you for coming back. You guys know that for me, I think that as hard as it is to have these conversations about domestic abuse and domestic violence, I do think they're important conversations to have. My story is not in any way, shape, or form to put anyone on blast, but it is more for awareness. My goal is always to, number one, just share my testimony, right? Part of me sharing is healing for me. But number 2, if there is anyone that I touch with my story who may be experiencing something similar to what I have gone through and uses that as encouragement to get out, to move on, to leave a toxic or bad or dangerous situation, that is always my number 1 goal. So again, these videos are for awareness purposes. They are healing for me. It is a way for me to tell my story and my progress to life after domestic abuse. Go back to visit the Enough series for context on today's topic. I really felt like it was important to just give a little insight as to the things that transpired after I left. One thing that I learned: abusers become the most dangerous when you are on your way out, or when they realize that you've had enough and you may be ready to leave. They say that it is important for you to have an exit plan or exit strategy. And they also say that it usually takes the victims 7 or more times to actually leave. I cannot tell you how many times I left my house after being assaulted, because let's just call it what it is. I wanted to leave. I knew I couldn't come back. I knew it was not safe for me to go back home, but I did. I found myself repeatedly going back for a number of reasons. Whatever the reasons were, for me at the time, they were important to me. At the end of the day, I realized that nothing is more important than my life. When I felt like my life was truly in jeopardy is when I left, and I left for good. It was very hard to do, and the aftermath was just as hard as the abuse that I dealt with while I was in the situation. So let's get into it. Now, for this series, I did take a few notes, something a little different than I have done in the past. And it is because there were so many things that happened really in a real short period of time. But I wanted to make sure I touched on a couple of key points. So just a little recap. At the end of Enough Part 3, I talked about the day that I left and driving myself from Texas to Ohio. I did not tell anyone that I was leaving. I didn't tell anyone that I was on the road until I was out of Texas. It took me 5 hours, no joke. It took me 5 hours to drive from the south side of Houston to out of the state. And it took me 2 days total to get home, which is Cincinnati. I wasn't sure my car was going to make it, but I just put my faith in God that I would get home. I drove from Texas to Tennessee in 1 day, and then from Tennessee home the next day. The only people that I told while I was en route was my job and my mom and my sister. I went completely ghost from my ex. I blocked his cell phone number. I blocked his email address. We had a GPS in the car, took that out. blocked him on social media. Everything that I could think of where he could access me, I blocked it. I had been talking to his sister. Overnight, I stayed in a hotel, and the next morning I found out from his sister he had found my Apple Watch in the house and was able to see my messages between her and I. I attempted to, and I say attempted, to deactivate my watch. Interestingly enough, at the time, it took me way too long to deactivate that Apple Watch. I'll get to that later. So I went completely ghost to him. I made it home. I ended up staying with my mom. So sidebar, my immediate family is my mom, my dad. I have an older sister, a twin brother, and my sister has a son, so I have one nephew. At the time when I came home, I didn't tell any of them. We are in a family group chat and we talk regularly, frequently, all day long. So I spoke to my mom and sister, but I asked them not to share what happened with anyone else because I felt like I wanted to tell it. And they agreed. They also felt like it was my story to tell. So I ended up staying with my mom. In the course of a few days, there was so much that happened. It's kind of a blur to the time frame, but I'm going to do my best to give you guys the series of events in sequence. So as I blocked him, he began to call me from another number, email me from another email address, and it was repeated over and over and over again. He was downloading a number. I'm guessing Google. He would download a number, call me from that. I would block it, and he would just download another number. With the email address, he would email me. I would block that email, and he would create a new email address and email me from there. Then he would email me from a phone number. So I didn't even know you could do that, right? But he was emailing me from a phone number. The whole time I'm not responding. I did not want to be found. I had literally had enough. I had been in this relationship for far too long. I had been tired of the relationship for far too long. I had been hurt. I had mentally checked out way before this time, like way before this day. So to me, once I left out of the city, once I left out of the state, there was no turning back. He did his best to try to find me, and I did not immediately change my phone number or my email address because I had that phone number and email address for such a long time. All of my connects, all of my business was attached to that contact information. So in my head, I was thinking, I need to update all of my accounts, credit cards, bank statements, you name it, right? My car note, everything that I was paying for, all the people that I knew, I literally had that email address and that phone number for probably 10 or more years. So in my head, I was thinking, I have to redo all of this because of some dumb guy. No, but I also felt like because he was contacting me nonstop and I didn't want it, I needed to change my contact information in order to disappear. So because I wasn't responding, he began to reach out to my family and my friends. Remember, I hadn't really told anybody yet. I was staying at my mom's house, and one afternoon I hear someone coming in the door, and it was my brother, my twin brother. And of course, to his surprise, he saw me there. So I explained to him while I was there what happened, and my brother was irate. I mean, really, that's probably putting it as nicely as I can. He was upset. He went into protective mode like any other brother would. He began to tell me that he got my back and don't worry about it. He asked me, what are you going to do about your things? And at the time, I was ready to abandon it all. I was ready to walk away from everything. It hurt me to do it because I built an entire life in Texas. But at the same time, I was so afraid to go back that it just became stuff. And there were my clothes that he destroyed. I could just imagine what the rest of my house looked like. My brother told me, basically, it's up to you. If you want to walk away, you could totally do that. But if you want your things back, we're going to get your things back. He would go to Texas with me to help me get my things and to make sure that I am safe. Now, I wasn't aware at the time, but my brother had been texting his friends to let them know what happened. And he also started a group chat with him and my sister. And I didn't have my phone on me. I think it was in the other room. I'm sure it was in the other room because I didn't want to be found. This guy was blowing me up. So I didn't have my phone on me because I was tired of that. As I'm talking to my brother, he's having a conversation with his friends. He's asking them if any of them are available to take a ride to Texas to help me get my things. I'm assuming he told them what happened. He's also chatting with my sister and I don't know it. So him and my sister are having a conversation back and forth about what happened and about my ex. A little bit of time goes by. My brother is still there. I ended up going in the other room and getting my phone, and I see a message in my Facebook Messenger from someone I don't recognize. I open it up and someone made a threat to me. It essentially said, if you send your people after my boy or my cuz, I'm coming for you. It went on to say, I know where you live and I know what your car looks like. And it described my car. So this whole time I had not talked to my ex. When I saw that message, I was afraid, but that's when I called him. I called the last number that he contacted me from, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're having people threaten me now? Like, seriously, there's nothing else for us to talk about. I literally just want you to leave me alone. I thought that was clear when I left and I ghosted him, but it wasn't. I had to say, I want you to leave me alone. And he told me at first, he doesn't know what I'm talking about. He didn't have anybody make a threat to me, but tell your brother that him and his dogs need to back off, because if he come for me, I'm coming too, or something like that, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about, right? So my brother is there. I asked my brother, have you talked to him? And I'm knowing good and well they haven't talked, because they don't have each other's phone numbers. They're not cool like that. They are cool to the extent that was somebody I was dating, and my brother respected that was someone I was dating. But a friendship, not at all. They don't have each other's phone numbers. And essentially, that's what my brother told me. No, I haven't talked to him. So in the course of that conversation, I realized he can still see my messages. This was another attempt for me to deactivate my Apple Watch, because I thought I did it, but for some kind of way he was continuing to see my messages. So another incident I remember, in the same course of a couple of days, he continued to try to talk to me. He continued to try to email me. He texted me. He would call. No response. He called my mother's house. My mom and I were talking, and I left to go downstairs to go outside, and the phone rings. I hear her say, Dawn, are you calling me from downstairs? And evidently she was saying this as she was picking up the phone. Well, it wasn't me calling. It was my ex. And because, remember, everything was in my name, when he called my mother's house from our house phone, my name popped up on the caller ID. So this is how he was able to find out exactly where I was. So after that, of course, I had to make contact with him, because I thought, now you're taking it too far. I don't want to talk to you, and that should be obvious. But don't call my parents. There's no reason for you to talk to my parents. There's no reason for you to reach out to anybody I know. I don't want to talk to you, and they don't have anything to do with us. The conversation obviously went nowhere, but the few times I did talk to him, my ask back to him was always the same. There is nothing else left to talk about. I'm not coming home. I want you to leave me alone. Leave me alone. walk away, get out of my house, return my keys, return my car keys, give me my car back, and leave me alone. And he couldn't do it. Oh, and I forgot this. Not only was he reaching out on me on text message, he was reaching out to me on Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. WhatsApp. I was getting text messages from everywhere. He was calling me from all these different numbers, and he was emailing me from an email address and phone numbers. I do remember at one point, I ended up writing him a message and telling him, that's it. I've had enough. I'm not picking up the phone. I'm not responding because I don't want to talk to you. There's nothing left. Let's not act like this is the first time you put your hands on me. Let's not act like you haven't apologized to me a million times before. Let's not act like we have this great relationship. Let's stop pretending that it's all good. It's not. You're not going to change, and I'm not willing to stick around to find out what you're going to do next, right? I'm done. I want you to leave me alone. If you don't leave me alone, I'm going to go to the police. If you don't return my car, I'm going to report it as stolen. Like literally, just walk away. Now, mind you, at this point, I hadn't reached out to the police yet. I have never actually called the police on him. And I didn't go to the police after this incident at this point. So yet another incident. Again, I was not responding to his messages. So he reached out to my nephew and my best friend. I actually think he reached out to my best friend twice. But the first time he reached out to her, he did reach out to her and my nephew on the same day. I think almost the same message, almost the exact same message, if not the exact message, because I remember both of them calling me back to back. And I believe he sent them a text message because I do remember asking them to send me a screenshot of it. And essentially what the message said was that he's sorry for reaching out, but he couldn't think of any other way to get a hold of me. He's been trying to contact me and I'm not responding, but he wanted to get a message to me through them. And the message was basically, I'm sorry for everything I did. I'm sorry for the way things ended up. Despite what you think, I want another chance to make it up to you, to prove to you that I'm a good person, that I, really love you and I care for you. But I understand that you don't want to talk to me. He left a message for me on his tablet. I believe he either sent them the code or he told them where to find the code in my house. Then he said something to the effect of, he's going to the range. That was the first time he communicated to someone, either myself, my family member, my friend, his attempts to unalive himself. So they did send me those messages. I asked them to not respond, like just don't engage. There was another incident while I'm talking about that. There was another incident that happened. He had made another threat to unalive himself. He told me that he made a purchase. He was driving down to the beach. This was it. These would be his last moments. So he just wanted to say sorry and goodbye or something to that effect, right? And he left it to me in a text message, I believe. So I do remember calling him. And in hindsight, and like almost immediately after, I was so mad and I regretted it because what I didn't realize that he was doing was manipulating me. It was his attempt to get me on the phone, to say his piece, to get me to feel sorry for him or have sympathy and to come back. I didn't know that's what he was doing at the time. I talked to him. It seemed like he was crying. He told me what he had done. He told me that he, destroyed all this stuff in the house and he was sorry and da 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 da. I remember just kind of telling him, I can't help you, but I don't think that's the answer. You have a child. You do have a reason to live. Think about your family. Think about your mom. Think about your child. And I do remember telling him, like, they have hotlines. Like, you can talk to somebody. You need a counselor. Because I'm not it. I think I found out that same day that he had also reached out to one of my friends in Dallas, but I don't think I found out until later on. Well, when I was talking to him, it was so draining. It was so draining. And I was like, I can't do this. And I was like so mad because I was like, here he's just played me again, right? Speaking to that, there was a third time. There was a third time where he ended up calling me from the house. Actually, I don't think he called me. I think he left me another text message, and I called and he didn't answer, and I called the house and he didn't answer. I remember my crazy, concerning self. I remember I called HPD and had them go to my apartment to do a wellness check. And I called his mom and his sister, and I told them, you need to call him and check on him and make sure he's okay. And again, I didn't realize this at the time, but it was just another tactic. It was manipulation. HPD ended up calling me back and telling me that he wasn't at home, but he ended up calling me back and telling me his mom called him. And he had the nerve to ask me, why did you do that? So apparently he just went to the corner store or something. I don't know. He went to go get something to eat. But it was like, hello, you didn't just call me and threaten to take your life and like in my house, you know what I mean? So again, I want somebody to learn from. I want somebody to learn from me. Don't be fooled by the nonsense. Don't be fooled by the foolishness. People who manipulate, and they do it well. People who are controlling, they do it well. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly the things to say to get you, to rope you in, and just don't fall for it. And what I've learned, what people told me after the fact, if they were serious about that and that is something that that person wanted to do, that's on them. It's not on me. And I had to learn that. I had to learn that they were right. Even if he did harm himself, that would be between him and the Lord. It really doesn't have anything to do with me. It's not my problem. It is literally on him. So anyway, one last incident I do want to talk about before I wrap up this part of the mini series. In the midst of all that, again, I tried my best to disappear. I mean, he knew I was in Ohio because he figured it out when he talked to my mom. But I knew he wasn't coming. I knew it, but I didn't know. I was terrified. I was having nightmares every day about him finding me. Actually, I'm going to tell two more stories. I used to have nightmares. And again, he used to tell me, if I tell anyone, he will unalive me. He will hunt me down and unalive me. And so when I left, I would have nightmares of him doing just that. I would have nightmares of him being outside my mom's house, and I would be inside her house and I could see him and he couldn't see me, but he was just close enough. Or I would be at my mom's neighbor's house, and he would be walking around my mom's house. So again, I could see him. He couldn't see where I was, but he was close enough to where he found me. And I would try to run. I would try to get away, but it just seemed like in my dream, I couldn't get away fast enough. He was like always on my tail. But one night I had a dream, and in this particular dream, he actually made it inside the house. And I was back in the bedroom laying down, and I could see directly out the doorway, down the hallway. And I saw a figure coming to me, and the figure looked like my brother. And I remember saying my brother's name, but I didn't get a response. The figure kept getting closer and closer. And as the figure got closer, they got into the doorway, and I remember saying my brother's name again, but I looked up and it wasn't my brother. It was him. And before I could say anything, he lifted up a shotgun and got me right in the middle of my chest. And that dream seemed so real to me that I promise you, it woke me up out of my sleep. And I gasped like this. I can honestly, as I'm telling a story right now, I could feel a hole in my chest, an emptiness right here. When I had that dream, I was terrified, I was afraid, and I had enough. And I knew that something had to be done in order to get him to completely leave me alone. So, last story I'm going to tell, and I believe this happened after I had my dream. I finally changed my phone number. I finally changed my email address. And let me just say that All of this that I've just described happened within a 30-day time frame. I'm not even joking. So the last incident, I finally changed my phone number. I finally changed my email address. The good thing is that him and I never had the same friends, so I wasn't really worried about any of my friends sharing my contact information or any of my family for that matter. But I changed my information and I wanted to send my contact information to a handful of people. So close family, my immediate family, obviously, a couple of family members, because again, I still hadn't told everyone. I sent the number to a handful of very, very close friends. And then I had one group of girlfriends in Houston that I talked to on Facebook Messenger. I hadn't talked to them the whole time about what was going on, but I did kind of share some of the things that were happening, and they knew when I left. You know, shout out to my sisters because they really showed up when I needed them to. They were very supportive. They hooked me up with a little cash, and I still keep in touch with them to this day. So in our group chat, I wanted to tell them, hey, I finally changed my phone number. Here's my contact information. Please don't share it with anyone. In fact, I don't want to talk on Facebook Messenger anymore. Text me. And as soon as I did that, I kid y'all not, within seconds, I got a text message that said checkmate. And my heart started racing. Boom, 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 boom. Checkmate. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way, right? How did he get my phone number? I have no idea. At the time, I didn't know. I couldn't figure it out because I'm going down the list of like who I sent my number to. And I'm like, there's no way that any of those people would tell him my information. And at this point, after like the 16th try to deactivate my watch, I finally, after having to call the cell phone company, was able to get it disconnected. So I couldn't figure it out. So I called him. He didn't answer the phone. I called him again. He didn't answer the phone. I called him again and he answered the phone and hung up. I called him again and he answered the phone. And of course he was cussing me out and wanted to know why am I blowing him up now, right? So he basically was like, I got you. I got you now. And he said maybe one or two other things. I couldn't even make it out. And then he hung up the phone again. Well, I could not figure it out. And then I thought about Messenger. So I said, some told me, let me check my email address, right? I updated my email address, but I hadn't deactivated my Gmail yet. I logged into my Google account. Well, I tried to log into my Google account. I couldn't log in. Google told me I just changed my password and I don't know what it is. So what I figured out was that I left a Kindle device in the house. And my Kindle device has everything that I access on it. So all of my social media, my email address, everything. And everything that my username is my email address, he had. And it was very easy for him to get to it. He logged into my email address, he changed my password, and he had access to all my stuff. And I couldn't see it or get into it to block him. So he was able to see my Facebook messages to my friends in Facebook Messenger. And that's how he saw my new phone number. When that happened, I was so angry. I was upset and I was afraid. Of course, I changed my number again, like right away, immediately. So it was, everyone who I just sent my new phone number to, 10 minutes later, I'm sending them another new number. Some of them didn't know what was going on. So they were alarmed, right? So I changed my email address again, changed my phone number again. The very next day, I left the house because I didn't want to do anything in front of my mom or my siblings. I left the house. I took a ride around the corner. I called the National Domestic Violence Hotline and I asked for some advice. I told them my situation. I asked for some advice. And they asked me, number one, was I somewhere safe? And I was. And they asked me, had I contacted the police? And again, at the time, I had not. They gave me some resources in Houston to help me if I decided to go back home, and recommended that I contact the police. They also told me that with him trying to repeatedly contact me, it is actually a form of digital stalking. And they recommended that I do not engage. They told me, do not have your family engage. take a screenshot of every time he tries to contact you, your friends, or your family, save it, delete the message, and block him. And they told me to keep a stalking log. So that's what I did. I started to build a case. I had to tell my family and my friends, no matter how hard it is, do not engage. At this point, he had not only been repeatedly trying to contact me through every means possible, Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp, text message from multiple different numbers, email multiple different numbers, reaching out to my best friend, my nephew. He called my mom's house and he contacted my dad. I had to tell them, no matter how much you want to say something, no matter how bad you want to engage, don't say anything. Take a screenshot, send it to me, block him, and delete the message. Now, I do have to back up and tell you, I had probably been home for 2 weeks before I told my dad. The day I was planning to tell my dad, my ex sent my dad a text message. And he sent it from a number that my dad obviously didn't have saved, so he didn't recognize the number. And he told me that he didn't end up reading the entire message, but it didn't make sense to him until I saw him. And then he was like, oh, that must have been what that message was about. I remember when I talked to my dad, him telling me he was glad I was at home. I'm safe now. And he got me. And my dad told me that I needed to go to Houston and close out my affairs. I wanted to leave my stuff behind. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to walk away. I was like, it's just stuff. I don't care. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this lease. I don't know how I'm going to do any of these things. I got 2 cars. I don't know how I'm going to do any of that, but I just don't care. I'm afraid to go back. And my dad told me, you work too hard. You work too hard to throw that away. Yes, it's material things, but it's your things. And you work too hard. So we're going to go back and we're going to close out your affairs. He told me I will go with you and I'll stay with you as long as it takes. I remember him giving me a kiss on my forehead. I remember him telling me that he loved me. He was glad I was home and safe. He was glad that I told him. And I remember him giving me a hug. And from there, we planned to go to Texas and get my things. So I am going to end part 1 to the mini series, closing the chapter. I will follow up in part 2. So thank you guys again, as always, for joining me. Thank you for listening to me share my story. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, comment, and you can share. Until next time, love you guys. Bye.